Welcome to another weekend bonus episode of the Tech Meme Ride Home. I'm Brian McCullough. So for the final weekend bonus episode of 2019, I wanted to check in with crypto. What a year for the crypto space. Seemingly dead at the beginning of the year, but then the crypto spring happened, and then Libra happened, and so where are we now? No one better than CoinDesk's Brady to catch us up. So I know this is the most annoying question to get asked as a reporter on your beat, but let's start off with Bitcoin and the price of Bitcoin. And because I think the last time I spoke to you was right when the so-called crypto spring was happening and Bitcoin was back above 10,000. So in the intervening months, what has happened? I see we're back under 10,000 and have been for a while.
Yeah, I'm kind of falling right around 7,000. No one ever really knows why the price is what the price is, but I can tell you that as spring was coming, I had people telling me who argued that every time Bitcoin starts to really do a rally, it does an enormous rally and look for a giant number by the end of the year, and that really doesn't seem like it's going to happen. I think. This is just my explanation, just based on some stuff people have said to me around the space. But I think folks continue to be disappointed by the fact that big players still aren't moving into the space. And so, that's what I'm going to go to for my explanation. But, a million things are happening. Another useful thing, though, we don't really know why exactly, but one of our reporters did a story recently that was about how the correlation between the stock market and Bitcoin is really starting to break down. So it used to be that as stocks would fall, people would retreat to Bitcoin in a much more decisive way. And that's happening so much less now that it's almost like the correlation isn't even really there anymore. And there's people who've always questioned that correlation. That's another part of the story that some folks are seeing. It's not a place to retreat to as much as it once was.
Well, let me come back to what you said about, the big institutional players or the big money not really showing up, because I feel like that's a lot of what I was, when I did report on this stuff, was talking about earlier in the year, that it was, Goldman or whoever was opening a crypto desk, and there were futures contracts being traded and things like that. So I felt like the first half of the year, it was all about getting that institutional infrastructure in place. Did it not follow through? Did it not actually happen?
I think the big scale stuff hasn't happened. There are futures contracts out there that you can get, and I think some of the bigger players are messing around with this stuff a little, but and I think one thing that we don't know the extent of that's happening because these entities tend to be so private about it is. I bet there are, in fact, more I had a story about a year and a half ago. I had a couple of retirement funds taking a very small position in a few cryptocurrencies through another fund. And I bet there's more of that than we actually know about, but there just hasn't been much marquee moves, with giant banks themselves taking positions in Bitcoin that I think people were hoping for. So, yeah.
I'm sure that the smarter people than me have thought this, but I was thinking the other day, maybe that original first rally was just, you're talking about big money, hedging and nibbling around the edges. What if that big rally was just everyone that had a lot of money? Just, if I was a billionaire, I'd be like, yeah, okay, I'll throw $1 million into Bitcoin just to be as a hedge. You never know. I maybe all that money that's already happened and no one's ever had the conviction to follow through and jump in with both feet or something like that.
Yeah, maybe. There's a guy, Travis Kling at, I'm going to say the name of his company wrong. It's Ikigai Asset Management. He made a pretty strong argument recently that the crypto spring Bitcoin rally was all just a hustle of a few whales in Bitcoin that they did for reasons of their own. They wanted it for a minute, and so they did it. So it's always hard to know. I think one of the the thing that crypto keeps wanting to see, and then the SEC keeps refusing to give them, is a Bitcoin ETF. And a part of the reason why the SEC refuses to do a Bitcoin ETF, they keep saying, is because they still feel like the market is manipulatable. And so, and if Kling's analysis is right, it still is. And so, and so that's a part of it, and then which would also explain why bigger institutions are still somewhat nervous about it.
What about all the other coins, which I have not been following up on at all? Everybody from Ethereum to you name it. Has it been? Was there sort of a similar spring for them that's sort of ebbed away as well?
Yeah, I mean, it all tends to go pretty together. If you just scan over the charts, they all tell a pretty similar story. The world has not the broader correlation between these assets has not changed dramatically.
So the other thing, the last time we talked, and it's almost, we've gone through a whole cycle with this subsequently, but a lot of people were saying that it was because Facebook was getting into crypto, and so there was a rally because everyone thought that was going to mainstream it. And, we're going to get into this in a second, but is the fact that seemingly maybe Libra is not going to be as big a thing as people thought, sort of dampening people's excitement?
Yeah, probably. I think if there were folks who were pricing in Libra happening soon, they were crazy. That was always going to take a while. But I think maybe also there's a chance that I think maybe some people are getting afraid that Libra is kind of educating legislators on cryptocurrency, and they might take a broader look too. Maybe that is making folks nervous. I don't know. But it certainly, the Libra story certainly hasn't helped. It's been a lot of negative attention to crypto.
Well, so what's your take on, Libra's health at the moment, seeing as how it's not actually alive yet? But I mean, are all of the payment companies basically out of the association at this point?
I believe PayU is still in, right? They're a pretty small one out of Latin America. So I'm pretty sure they still are in. But yeah, like all the other ones that everyone has heard of left. And PayU is still in. And they left, that was a wild day. They left all on the same day. So it was really wild when it happened. But yeah, Visa, MasterCard, Stripe, Mercado Pago, they all backed out kind of at roughly the same time. And it looked like a really bad moment for Facebook, and people were like, Libra is dead. I definitely don't think that's true. I think this is way more than a side project for Facebook. I think they're gonna see it through and make it happen. But the companies that stood to gain the least, got cold feet first.
Well, right. I mean, on the one hand, it would seem like if Libra were successful, it would sort of cut into the businesses of, if you're a payments company. But then was it also just as simple as, why, if you're Visa, MasterCard, PayPal, why do you want any sort of regulatory scrutiny? You're doing fine as it is. Is basically that's the bottom line. They're just like, why do we need this hassle?
I think so. Yeah, I think they viewed it at first as a hedge. They're like, well, if this is really going to, eat our lunch eventually, let's kind of be a part of it. But then then I think they thought it was just completely not worth it. Like you said, it's too much regulatory scrutiny. They don't want anyone to have any sign of them doing anything wrong or enabling doing anything wrong. So I think they disappeared. The thing that I think is not that I'm I want to carry Zuck's water here or anything, but a part of the story which I feel like has been missed about Libra is if we take Facebook at its word, and I think this is at least somewhat true, that the point of Libra is to bring functional financial systems to parts of the world that don't really have it at a price that they can afford, quickly and easily, allow them to kind of leapfrog in the same way a lot of the developing world leapfrog to cellular before ever building landline systems. If we take them at face value, and I don't completely disbelieve that. I mean, I think they have some other reasons too, but I do think they want to do that. It is kind of crazy that we're just completely stifling this company's ability to reach the developing world for 1,000,000% first world concerns. I mean, this is all Europe and America pushing back, and for reasons that are layers and layers and layers up the financial stack from the population that this whole project was aimed at.
But everything you guys, the tea leaves that you guys are reading, Facebook is still going ahead with this, right?
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Do you think we'll see? What are the odds? What are the odds that we would actually see a product launch in 2020?
I'm going to put that at 15%.
Why? Because it's gonna take them years and years to. Now that they're in the regulatory quagmire, it's going to take a while to iron that all out.
Yeah, and I think there is a chance that they will eventually move fast and break things. Like, I think there's a chance that they'll eventually just do it somewhere and deploy a 1,000,000 team of lawyers to say, like, well, we're just doing it in Indonesia or whatever, so it's not relevant to U.S. law. I think there's a chance that eventually they'll do some gigantic backflips to do that, and I would not be surprised if they weren't preparing a plan to do that now. But they're a giant company that's making lots of money. They have plenty of runway. They're not going to do it next week. They're going to wait a while, and see if they can get some approval. One of the things I wonder about is if we do actually see the launch of any sovereign cryptocurrencies. So, for example, China has this one it's sort of talking about. I'm a little bit more interested in the one that Marshall Islands is talking about. But if there were a sovereign cryptocurrency that were to appear, it would effectively do a lot of the things, if it's really a cryptocurrency, that regulators are so nervous about Libra being able to do. And so it feels like that's a world in which it would become easier for Facebook to roll something out if there was some kind of sovereign coin out there that people took seriously. I think if something like that happened, it could move things along. I think Facebook will make an argument for that. So I have a feeling they're watching for things like that too. But I do sort of believe that Libra is existential to Facebook, and so I don't think that they're going to rush it. But I also think they're not going to give up on it.
I did not cover this story, so I'm going to have to lean on you a little bit to actually explain the story before we talk about it. But this Ethereum guy that just got arrested, Virgil Griffith, right, is his name.
Yeah.
First of all, tell us what happened, and then was he a big deal in Ethereum?
Yeah, so Virgil, he wasn't like a famous guy, but people really like him in the Ethereum world, and he had like hacker cred well before Ethereum too. So he was well known in, like, for example, the Tor community, like well ahead of ever being involved in Ethereum. But he was a good friend of Vitalik's. He did like special projects for the Ethereum Foundation, which meant that, like, he was largely just going around the world trying to, like, find new ways to move Ethereum forward. So, for example, we did a story not too long ago about how he was trying to get Ethereum approved as compliant under Sharia law, the Muslim law. There's been some cryptocurrencies that have succeeded in doing that so far. He was trying to get that for Ethereum. So he did things like that. People liked him. He was viewed as something as like a mentor figure. But he also, and I don't know Griffith. I know a lot of people who do know him, but I don't know him personally. But he is, he's kind of one of those dreamery, hackery types. He's, sort of ideological. And so the story of what happened is in April this year, he took a trip to North Korea with a few other, non-North Koreans, not a large number, we're told. And it was sort of one of their typical tourist trips that they do. Everyone's approved to go. It's all scheduled. You're constantly with a minder the whole time, where you got to see some different parts of Korea. But it ended with this Pyongyang blockchain conference. And Virgil gave a presentation there, allegedly on blockchain and peace. And then subsequent to that, he volunteered to do an interview with the FBI about it, in which he told the FBI what he did. He let them look at his phone. He showed them photos, and the FBI arrested him on Thanksgiving Day for going to North Korea teaching them about blockchain technology and allegedly discussing with people how blockchain technology could be used for evading sanctions. But I will say one of the things in the complaint, you sort of wonder how much of this stuff the FBI understands. One of the things they sort of emphasize in the complaint is some discussion of mining, and which is like, cryptocurrency mining. So for folks who listening don't know, people basically like deploy these computers in the network that crunch a bunch of numbers that allow them to earn cryptocurrency. And so, you could argue, I guess, a way that North Korea could, evade sanctions is by taking some money they have, buying some, mining computers, some like in China, for example, and then running them in North Korea and generating ETH that way. I guess you'd call that evading sanctions. But it's sort of, I don't know, it's a different thing, but it would be a way in which they were generating, what is money, and the U.S. doesn't like that. So he admitted to all these different activities. I think the most damning thing from most people's perspective is the FBI says in their complaint that Griffiths sought permission from the U.S. State Department to go to North Korea and do this. They denied it. And he went anyway. I saw one attorney pointed out that the FBI complaint doesn't give any details of the denial. Like, it doesn't say when the denial actually happened. So I guess theoretically, maybe Griffiths was still waiting on the denial, when he went. It doesn't actually address that. But anyway, they say that it was denied, and he still did it anyway, and then later admitted to having done it. And so he's been arrested for violating U.S. law in that way.
This is a story that actually I'm seeing a bit of chatter about just today. We might get our first crypto native senator, at least temporarily, it looks like.
Yeah, well, and we can debate whether she's crypto native or not, but that was a story that she is the CEO of a division of the company that runs New York Stock Exchange, ICE, that is sort of managing crypto holdings and exchange, and specifically Bitcoin, holding Bitcoin and exchanges for folks backed. I mean, how hardcore Ms. Loeffler really is, the future Senator Loeffler really is about Bitcoin, sort of unclear. She had worked in public relations for ICE for the last 18 years and then was appointed to this CEO job. She did that for, 18 months, and now she's moving on to the Senate. So I'm sort of curious to see how much crypto claims her as one of their own, and we'll see. But yeah, so it looks like she's moving to the Senate at least for a little while, and then if she wins the election that comes up at the end of the actual term, she'll stick around longer.
Right. This is she would be appointed by the governor of Georgia for the interim position, and she has been. So as of today, officially, she has been. Gotcha. Yeah, it was rumored. It's been rumored for a little bit, but as of today, we now know that he is saying yes. She's the pick. Something else that came across my transom recently was something about the Lightning Network, and again, that was something that I feel like I was hearing a lot about towards the end of last year, beginning of this year. Where are we on the Lightning Network? Lightning Network's going fine. It's, still a beta network. What is the latest news on Lightning? I'm not really sure. They just had a big conference that a lot of people went to in Germany. People are feeling pretty good about it. So I guess what might be helpful for your listeners to know is sort of what the Lightning Network is, Bitcoin is a seamless and fast way to move value around the world, but it is kind of expensive to do. You have to pay a transaction fee every time you send a Bitcoin, and that can be anywhere from a few cents to a few dollars, depending on how much traffic there is in the network and how much demand there is for Bitcoin at the time. And obviously that's too much. Any cost at all is too much for making very small payments. So what the Lightning Network basically does is, to make it insanely simple, is you put your Bitcoin into this other wallet that knows it's there, and then on this second layer network,
you can move Bitcoin around really quickly and really trustlessly, and it doesn't cost as much because the Bitcoin isn't actually moving on the Bitcoin network. It's moving on Lightning. It's just all the Bitcoin that's on Lightning is being held in these sort of central wallets. And then whenever you're done doing however much you want to do, you can leave it there for days or weeks or years. It doesn't really matter. Whatever amount you have left in your Lightning wallet, you can then take that much out, and it leaves the Lightning network and goes back to the Bitcoin network, and then that resolves to your Bitcoin wallet. So it's a way to make very small payments using Bitcoin. So yeah, it's proceeding along well, and the community's getting bigger all the time. But I don't think there's been any breakout success stories yet on Lightning, but it is still beta technology.
Are there any big stories that I should be watching out for in 2020 in the crypto space that we're anticipating?
Big stories in 2020 in the crypto space. I mean, I think we're going to continue to see more resolutions from the SEC's pursuit of various crypto projects. So, we still don't know what's happening with the SEC's case against Kick's cryptocurrency Kin. Actually, Kick no longer owns Kick the app. They're basically just a cryptocurrency project now. There's only like 18 people on their team. We don't know what's happening with the SEC's pursuit of the Telegram token sale. So I think that's going to be another big story. So I think continuing to see sort of regulatory clarity, with Loeffler in the Senate and some ties to this community. I think that next year could also be the year in which we see the crypto community actually get serious about pushing for new laws for itself. So I think that's going to be a big thing, which I guess also relates to whatever happens with Yang's campaign. Those are a few things. I think we'll also, look for some more resolution in the world of stablecoins. Stablecoins are cryptocurrencies that don't tend to fluctuate a lot in value. One of the OG stablecoins is this stablecoin called DAI, and it has made some real advances in sort of how it maintains its stability by incorporating more kinds of assets, and look for more of that to happen next year, and for potentially DAI, that kind of really the only trustless stablecoin out there, to potentially have a surge. Maybe not, but it's definitely one of the more interesting projects on the Ethereum blockchain. And one of the things is sort of a sign of more of its progress. And it did hit this major milestone this year by incorporating another asset into its set of collateral, and it intends to incorporate lots more going into next year.
Finally, real quick, you and I were talking about this offline, but I'm using that Brave browser now, so I'm sitting here looking at 1.8 BAT. So the idea is I should be able to redistribute that to sites now that I'm blocking their ads from, so that hey, and I didn't watch all your dumb ads, but here I'll tip you some BAT, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. BAT. I think. Brave. I like the Brave browser. I know you should say that as a journalist. I like the Brave browser. I've been using it for a long time, and I've been covering BAT for a long time. And I think Brave and BAT deserve some kudos they were one of the first big ICOs to actually start doing some of the stuff they promised. There's a lot of ICOs that have raised a lot of money and have done test nets and some experiments and some prototypes and stuff like that. But generally speaking, we haven't seen a lot of those ICOs put out products that real people are using that have had an impact in the real world. And that is one of the first ones to do it. So now the Brave browser is serving you ads itself if you give permission to that, and then you earn some BAT for that. These aren't ads on the website. They're like pop-up ads. And you earn some BAT for that. And then, you can donate that, or you might be able to use it to pay for services on sites like subscriptions, but mostly now I think, people are just redistributing it back to different content creators, largely YouTube creators. YouTube creators are really into that. And so that's an ICO that's kind of coming to something. So I think that's pretty interesting. And they were one of the first to do it.
Can I trade BAT on Coinbase?
You can definitely trade. I'm pretty sure that's on Coinbase,
okay.
But I don't think you can take it out of the Brave browser quite yet. I can't remember what the latest is on that. You might be able to. When it first came along, you couldn't. But when I first did a story about sort of earning Brave on that, you couldn't take it out of the you couldn't personally take it out of the Brave browser yet. That might have changed. I haven't double checked on that yet.
I'm looking at the price chart on Coinbase right now. It doesn't look like this is one of those that's going to the moon anytime soon. So, but maybe I'll just hold on. I'll hold on to it. It got a $250 million market cap right now. The all-time high was 98 cents, and it's currently 18 cents.
It checks out.
Well, whatever. Listen, like I said, if I can find a way to pass it along to sites that I like, then I'll probably do that.